And my granddaughter's one of them, and my sister, or my daughter-in-law will not take her children to this swimming pool ever again.
Have they started swimming lessons already?
Hmm? Okay, they've taken Liza down there 2 years, and she is a little bit afraid of the water. She'll get into it, and they don't think they have time to work with her, so they set her up on the side, and there she sits. And they have paid the money to get her to, have swimming lessons, and they don't work with them. And she's not the only one. Because I have taken her down there myself when I was last summer.
They don't wanna force them though to scare them.
No, they're not forcing them.
That's what that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, they don't wanna, if she's afraid, they don't wanna force her.
No, I know
So that she becomes even more afraid,
Right,
because I know
that's-
my kids, but they slowly worked them in. I
They-
mean, my kids were afraid of the water too
Yeah.
at first.
Well, she's not afraid of the water, she goes out in a boat and goes fishing, and she'll wade along the shores at the lakes and stuff. But she goes down here and she'll get in the water, but if nobody works with her, she can't learn on her own to swim.
Right.
And that's what her problem is. She gets in the water and nobody comes over to give her a hand to help her. It's not that she's afraid of the
Well,
water.
every time I've been down there, I've always seen them work with them all.
I assume that they've complained to the management of the pool.
I don't know if she has or not. I don't really get too involved because I know she got pretty upset, and the last time I took her down there last summer and they didn't do anything, Trace says, well, that's it, I won't give them any more money and we'll go to Boston or someplace else. So I don't know what she's doing now. But there's a couple other little girls that would the same way. They'd get in the water, but nobody worked with them.
Allie Thomas was good when she did swimming lessons. So is, Shelley Retzloff's good too. And she's still on, isn't
Yeah,
she?
yeah.
And she does good with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if you talk to like Shelley, you know,
Well, I mean, I don't know any of them that are down there except the fact that last summer
Do you know
I,
her?
who?
Shelley,
Mhm.
would you talk to her? Just say something and see?
I can talk
I
to
mean, I
her.
go down and talk to her, but I don't know where she is or number or anything, just to check on her.
I can probably get her in to come to a meeting.
I'm just saying what I've seen
She
and what,
can, I mean, because, you know, then maybe she could explain, well, I don't know. Like I said, I've always seen them, like, I mean, for the ones that have been afraid, they will set them up on,
oh,
you
yeah, I
know,
know that.
but then they'll come in, they'll take their hands and they'll slowly bring them in. So, I guess.
But no, it's not that she's afraid of water because she goes out and
Go ahead.
I guess we'll schedule the next meeting for, what is it, the 8th,
8th of July,
6:30 again?
yeah, I guess, fine with me. I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Did you want these or?
Oh, I'll take them.
Are you on vacation that week? The 7th, 8th, 9th?
No, maintenance has always got a workshop going.
No, I know. Well,
Is that shut down?
we don't have shut down. No, but I took vacation the 7th through, I took vacation that week.
I'm not. I thought you had an agenda.
I had somebody ask me one time, or, no, I said something about vacation and paid time off. I said, is it vacation or paid time off? They said, isn't it the same thing? I said, isn't vacation when you want it, paid time off at anybody's convenience?
That's right. Take my dailies.
You ready?
It's Tuesday, June 10th, 2014, 7 PM. Call the regular monthly meeting of the Common Council to order. Roll call, please.
Clipstein,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yeah,
Garvin,
Yes.
Huber,
Yes.
Folks,
Yes.
Stanek.
Yes. Pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The new flag.
Right.
Okay, agenda item number 4, the approval of minutes from the May 13th meeting.
I'll make a motion to
I,
approve.
wait a minute. I have two things I wanna bring up here. I can't find just where they are now, but anyway, at our last meeting, they, quoted me as saying that I felt that we should split the $49,000 between the city and the library. And that's not quite the way I worded it. I said, if it was up to me tonight, without looking at all the papers, that I would recommend paying half and letting the library pay the other half. And since then, I've looked through all this stuff and I have a different opinion, so.
Sorry. 7 o'clock test.
Oh,
But that was,
get me all excited.
that was mentioned in there in a couple of spots, so. Just so that it's,
Is that the comment?
yeah, that was a comment.
Okay,
I thought you said you had 2 of them?
Yeah, I got you.
yeah, it was mentioned in 2 places, it's the same comment.
Yeah, same comment.
With that correction, I would make a motion to approve the May 13th, 2014 minutes with Larry's noted correction.
I'll second it.
Motion made, seconded for approval of minutes. All those in favor signify by aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion's carried. At this time, we'll have public comments. We have a 5-minute limit. If anybody wants to talk at work.
Yes. I'm Norm Kameen. I'm a resident of the township of Plymouth. And I and my family have benefited from the Elroy Public Library for about 40 years. I live with a member of the library board, and right now she's rolling her eyes because she didn't know I was going to speak. She did not put me up to this. In fact, I know all the members of the library board. I know the librarian. And they are all, to my way of thinking, honest, straightforward, community-minded, sincere people. And the problem has come up at last month's meeting regarding this $39,000 shortfall in the basement project. The library board perceived the problem that needed attention. They solved it. They took bids, they got an architect, they got contractors, they oversaw it. They were concerned they did not have enough money, so they did it in 3 phases to assure that they would have adequate funds. A couple things happened. The building sits on stone walls, and the stone walls leaked. Water came in, there was mold, there was rot, and the city cut back their funding. So the funds that they thought they would have weren't all there. Still, in the end, they finished a beautiful building, and the total cost was somewhere in the $400,000 range. And this amount in question is less than 10% of that. These people work hard, they work as volunteers, and I consider the librarian to also be a volunteer because she does far more than she gets paid for. At that last meeting, if I had come in there with no other knowledge, I would come away thinking that this group feels that the library went on some kind of a wild spending spree and then tried to stick the city with the bill. And that's not the way I see it. And then I read your agenda for tonight, and you're talking about a closed session to discipline these people. Now, if you're gonna consider this, I would like you to stop and think. These people fixed up your library. They did all the work, and they would have had enough money, but for a few glitches. I know that you have to stick by rules, and there'll be a lot of talk about spreadsheets and agendas and who approved what. But at some point, the rules only go so far. And somebody has to get up off their butt and do something, and they did. And if I were sitting in your chair, at this closed meeting, if I were going to tell them anything, it would be thank you. Does anybody dispute anything I've said? Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to make a comment, question?
Well, my name is Chris Miller, and I live in LaValle, and I'm running for the State Assembly in the 50th District, and I wanted to come and introduce myself. I have been through town, downtown, getting my nomination paper signed, and I have met several of the residents, and the librarian being one, and so I feel I'm getting closer in my knowledge of this community as well as many of the others in Juneau County. I wanted to come here because this is probably the fifth largest population area in the 50th District, behind Mauston and Richland Center, Reedsburg, and New Lisbon. I've been a Lutheran minister for 35 years. Most of that time was time with people, living our lives and sharing our trials and triumphs. And I would describe it as living at the base of a cliff sometimes, when people would fall into our midst who had been bruised and broken and needed ministry, and that our church people have always responded. Well, that is what communities do as well, and that I have retired from 35 years of ministry to run for the assembly, and I feel like this would be an extension of that ministry, where this time I am going up the face of the cliff to build a fence at the edge of that cliff to keep people from falling off, and to change some of the rules at the top of the cliff so people aren't pushed to the edge and pushed off. So that's what I have seen in my ministry, and what I think uniquely qualifies me to run for the assembly. I am for our small communities, our rural economies, our public schools, our teachers, our children, and our environment, and I would ask you to consider voting for me. There is not a Democratic primary, so I am the Democratic candidate, and that election will be in November on the 4th. Do we get to pass things out?
Sure.
Or should I leave them, or?
Leave on the table.
Okay.
This is, looks good. Have those as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay, any other comments? Move on to number 6, communications. Mayor's comments, communications, recommendations, I have none at this time. Council? Okay. Administrator?
No, not this time.
Okay. Number 7, letter A, discussion, possible action, Class A liquor license for Brian Downing, Hanson's IGA and Mary Brook Quick Trip.
Just take a motion, Mark, to
Yep.
approve it? Okay.
Yep, all of these do.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to accept Ryan Downing's liquor license for the Hanson's IGA
I'll second.
And Mary Brook.
in Mary Brook.
Do we do them both at the same time?
Yes,
Mark?
each one.
Okay. Motion made, seconded for Class A liquor license for Hanson's IGA Quick Trip. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Letter B, Class B liquor license, Elroy American Legion, Doghouse Bar, Sportsman's Bar, Kaz's Bar and Grill.
I would make a motion to approve the Class B liquor licenses for Henry Schmidt, Elroy American Legion, Wanda Dogs, Doghouse Bar, Paul Revere, Sportsman's Bar and Grill, and Patty Kazmarek, Kaz's Bar and Grill.
I'll second it.
Motion made, seconded for Class B liquor license for the before said. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Letter C, reserve Class B liquor license and Class B beer combination malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license Marty Kennedy, Valley-Emma.
I'll make a motion to approve the reserve Class B liquor license and Class B beer combination malt beverage and intoxicating liquor license for Marty Kennedy at the Valley Inn.
Motion made and seconded for Class B for Marty Kennedy, Valley-Emma. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Letter D, cigarette tobacco license for Hanson's IGA Quick Trip.
I'll make a motion we accept the license for the Hanson's IGA Quick Trip for cigarette tobacco license.
I'll second.
Motion made, seconded for cigarette tobacco license. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. E, discussion possible action, operator's license for Haley Moore.
I'll make a motion to approve the operator license for Haley Seymour.
I'll second that.
Motion made, seconded for operator's license for Haley Moore. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Letter F, picnic permit for Elroy Fire Department for the Elroy Fair. We have those handout for major people. Okay.
Well, the first is picnic permit, second is the operators.
I'll make a motion to approve the request for a picnic permit for the Elroy Fire Department for the Elroy Fair.
I'll second it.
Motion made, seconded, for the picnic permit for the Elroy Fire Department for Elroy Fair. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Letter G, temporary operator's license for the Elroy Fire Department.
I have one question.
Yep.
On the top, for, under Cheryl Dobratz's, it says that it wasn't paid for yet. What does that mean?
We just didn't get the money for it yet, that's all that means. So we'll collect the money before, we would issue it.
So would we wanna make a motion or anything?
Yep. Yep, there's,
That's, I think, the fire department, is
Yeah.
it check?
right. So we have Ernest Jones, we have Mark Dobratz, we have Cheryl Dobratz, and I think that's it, and Jamie Ladward.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary operator's license for the Elroy Fire Department for the Elroy Fair.
I'll second.
Motion made, seconded, for the temporary operator license for Elroy Fire Department. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Letter H, discussion possible action.
What this one is, this is to, file, for financial assistance on our, street and water projects through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Fund. It's just a formality, we already, are starting the project, but the, application's not due until, August. And so it takes the process now, so, the first part is the authorizing the representative to file the application. And then the next one will be, declaring the official intent to reimburse those expenditures, so, and they're both for our, 4 water projects we got going on / street projects.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 961, authorizing representative to file application for financial assistance from State of Wisconsin Environmental Improvement Fund for the ongoing CDBG water and street projects.
I'll second that.
Motion made, seconded for approval of resolution 961. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call on these?
Yeah, let's do a roll call on these.
Roll call, please.
61. Krieger,
Yes.
Garvin,
Yes.
Huber,
Yes.
Folst,
Yes.
Clipstein.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. We'll go for resolution 962.
I will make a motion to approve resolution 962, declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures for the ongoing CDBG water and streets project.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded for approval of resolution 962. Any further discussion? Roll call on that, please.
Garvin,
Yes.
Huber,
Yes.
Folst,
Yes.
Clipstein,
Yes.
Krieger.
Yes.
Motion passes. Letter J, discussion possible action on borrowing public funds from Wisconsin State Trust Fund. Dollars.
I guess more to, we don't have any action item to do today, however, we're scheduling a meeting for 6:30 next week, Tuesday, to, after the utility commission, to meet with, Jim Mann of Ellers, he couldn't make it today, to do the state trust fund, loan for our developers agreement. So, that's the purpose of the meeting next week, we don't have to actually take action tonight, because we've kind of already taken the steps to start the ball rolling at last month's meeting. So it's more of a, to make sure you're available next week at 6:30, and that's gonna be the only item we're talking about next week, Tuesday.
You gonna send out a memo on that or an
Yeah.
agenda? Okay.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Have to let you know.
Okay.
Letter K, review housing code violations matrix and actions done in May and in the future.
I guess I'm the one that normally brings this up, and, you know, I guess I look at Mark, I look at Bill behind me, if I can see him. Did we take any further actions, any letters go out, any discussions with any of the people on this list?
Yes.
They sent out letters to the two persons I was supposed to send out to.
Okay, and which, those were the 110 South Main and 209 Academy?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
And then, let me find my list. Then, 203 Prospect was found guilty of her issue, a site, and the fine was reduced at that time. If they don't clean it up, we just continue to issue citations. The 302 and 306 Second Main Street, Ron Olson received a citation. He did not show up to court, so he was found guilty. Same thing, if he doesn't clean up, then it'll continue on. Doug Jackson received his citation. He did not show up to court either, and he's found guilty as well. So, and then 108 Prospect is gonna get notice from the sheriff's department, in fact, about her property. And we'll just piggyback with that. And the ones on Riverview Drive and Edward Drive, because one of our officers lives in that neighborhood, he's just going to continue monitor it, but as of right now, it's really not our violations as much as it is covenant violations, if they're even covenant violations, but, those are,
Thank you for the follow-up. I know I kind of bug you guys a lot about that. What about the trailer court? I wasn't out there over the last 2 weeks.
one trailer's totally gone, and the other one, he's working on it, he hasn't gotten it out of there yet.
Okay, but,
He kinda asked for a little bit of leeway into June to get that out.
okay,
There's still a couple of piles of wood out there, and Jamie is planning on, or the streets guys are planning on picking that up tomorrow.
okay.
It's just, when they had the opportunity in May, it was just too wet to get in there
Sure.
with the equipment, and kinda wreck the area, so their plan is to get in there tomorrow or Friday and get that out of there.
Okay.
So he still has one to go.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Bill.
Move on to letter L. Discuss need to develop long-term plan for Schultz Park, identify groups to be involved.
And Joe can take it if you want.
Yeah, we are gonna try to get people, and if you guys know anybody else that you could add to the list, like Joe Vicenda of the Legion, the Lions, the Fire Department, Fair Board, Chamber, 4-H, try to get them all together and have a meeting in July. He's gonna figure out the date, right?
Did you have
Yes.
the common
And
council
you'll-
on
Hmm?
it? Did you have the common council on
Yeah,
He's gonna wear two hats
it? Oh, okay.
for that.
Yeah. And then we're gonna all get together and get ideas and see what we can come up with. And take it from there. That's it on that one.
Okay. Letter M, discuss draft of a 5-year finance plan.
Mark, if I could, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. I don't think we need to really get into this, but I would ask, Mark spent a lot of time working on this, and will continue working on it, because we'll probably
Yeah.
start the budget in August.
Yep.
So I would say, take it home, kind of late night reading, thumb through it, especially the first page, we're talking about our goals. I mean, if you start with those 6 or 7 goals, those are the things we want to try to do this year. We want to focus on those same things next year. A lot of the reason why Mark is preparing this is to really to reduce our debt. we're really gonna try to work hard over the next 3 to 5 years to reduce our debt considerably, okay? It'd be nice to be zero free with debt, but that's gonna be almost impossible over 5 years. But if we get it moving in that direction, I think it'll really show up in this plan over the next 5 years. So, I don't think, Mark, certainly discuss it if you want, but I will get into it in detail in August.
Right. There's some blanks you'll see as you go through it on some of the projections and whatnot, but that'll come along. There's just to kind of hit the highlights. The third page in is tax levy projections, and I give 4 categories. First category is no increase. The second category is a 2% increase per year. And what that is net new construction. If we have enough construction, the state statutes cap it at 2% increase. General obligation debt means what our debt payment is for principal in the given year. And we can actually take that as a levy request if we want. If you take it one year, you can't take it the next year. So that's how that works. And then the combination is I added the max, the 2% increase plus the general obligation debt, just to show you what a combination was, combining it versus just having a no increase to the levy on that. That explains that page. Then you got revenues, historic and projected. Expenditures, historic and projected. I haven't got to the projected on expenditures yet. There's a lot more analyzing that needs to be done. The page after that is our debt that we have as a city, and each column is labeled accordingly. The far right column is the key there, where it says statutory and available. And what statutory means is that's the statutory allowed debt that we can take, and available means, what is left there. And so, once you get into 2023, 24, we're getting to where we would have no debt in that regard. And then you got 2 pages on the tax increment financing. Our valuations, and then the TIF taxes paid to the city. And then the last page is on TIF revenues, which I gotta start projecting out, but you will see that for 2014, TIF 4 will take in about $88,000. Our expenditure is $40,000, so there should be technically, $48,000, and that will just get stored away for the future of that TIF district. So that's the short of it. So take a look at it, review it. If you have questions, let me
Okay, letter M, discussion, possible action on Hidden Valley Magazine advertisement.
Excuse me. Every year, for I don't know how long, we've advertised in the Hidden Valley magazine of Southwest Wisconsin. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this magazine or whatnot, but our ad looks like that. And what they usually do is they dedicate a page to each community, so it's not just the city. Royal Bank's on there, and some other people are on there as well. From the community, the surrounding area. And so what they're doing is they're looking at, do we want to have another ad like this as well? And the ad is $847 for this ad. And there's a certain, they say that over 75,000 guides are distributed. They're distributed all around the southwestern, part of the state. And they added, our Facebook page, our bike trail comments, things like that. So the question is, do you want, you guys can look at it if you want, but the question is, do you want to continue to advertise in that? at that amount.
Is there any way that we know if it's effective at all, or to what degree? Or is this just a matter of faith?
It's more a matter of faith and just kind of a habit thing. From Paris and I talking about it, and in some of the places we're thinking about advertising and where we've done it, I don't think we get a lot out of that. You know, for $847, that's a significant part of the commons or the park budget that is for advertising, and you know, that could purchase 3 canoes maybe for it,
Yeah.
but,
Is that an annual, or what is the?
yeah, it's just once, and, you know, it's pretty much a summer magazine that goes out to, you know, visitor centers and chambers and, businesses and whatnot,
So basically we pay for the bank's advertising and everybody else is advertising?
No, they pay for their own.
Okay.
No, we pay for
Where
our
does,
spot.
where does Paris advertise right now?
You know, we're using a lot of, I'm trying to think who we just advertised at. But we're trying to get, you know, beyond. I mean, it's, advertising local is one thing, we want people from further away. You know, so we have done newspaper advertisements, but same thing, it's not the best. It's mostly, we're trying to get out there with the tourism, on the state tourism site, on the bike. The big push she has this year is on the biking websites and magazines and things like that, to get us into them.
How many websites are we on? Or any idea?
Oh, countless.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I
those
mean,
are
we
per-
try to hit, you know, the Chicago area, the Minneapolis area,
Okay.
and really target that, but we're, you know, pushing out there with Facebook and.
It just seems to me, without any sort of feedback on what we're getting, that it might not be the best use of dollars.
And if you look at their fee schedule on here, $847, third page ad in there. And for $250, you get a 1-year subscription to the website.
Right.
That may be something to consider as well.
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at the younger members of the council here. I mean, do you ever look at paper anymore? I mean,
No,
I mean, that's just, I
I
mean,
agree with
my,
him.
my kids are in their
100%.
40s, they don't even know what paper is, you know, they wanna know something, they don't look at paper, so, I still look at paper, you know. I don't think we really get our money's worth out of this. Now, you know, it's hard to say. Mark raised the right question. I mean, do we get our money's worth? I don't know, but I would rather spend it on a website somewhere or some, you know, Facebook page or something. That would seem to get more. What do you think? I mean,
You're one of the young ones.
I would say no, not putting it in the magazine. Look at other options.
You know, maybe you're right, you know, maybe it's, maybe we look at some of their other options on there and just stick with the website and, you know, be more minimal,
Yeah.
but keep that relationship with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, on the website, I think there might be ways to track how many go in to look at a particular thing.
so we're
Right,
saying
that's
that we
something we're
wouldn't
not
go with the
about.
printed paper, but we would consider that perhaps that 1-year website ad? Is that kind of the direction we wanna go, Mark, you think?
yeah.
Okay.
I'd wanna do it knowing that there's some sort of mechanism where we can see how many hits we're getting, to
Sure.
see if it's even worth that.
Yeah, so if we authorize the 1-year, $250 website ad, would that be, Mark, you think that would be a better way to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
we have until, where did this, July 15th? Or do we want Paris to take a look at this and see what it is? And then
We can investigate it further and,
And we can get it back before the
right,
next meeting, and that'd be before the deadline.
right.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'd like to see it.
She's spent a lot of time on advertising.
See if they can give us those numbers.
So we'll just. Just table that to the next meeting then, after we get something back to Paris. letter O, introduce resolution to close part of Elroy Street east of South Brooklyn.
This is a part of Elroy Street that lies between lands owned by Bruners and Catholic Cemetery. And all you'll be doing tonight is introducing this resolution, and then I have to send notice to everybody that's involved. I have to publish 3 times. It's a portion of the street that's never been, was platted back in the 1950s, never been opened. It's on a steep slope. It'd be very expensive to ever build a road on it. There's not cutting anybody off from access. All the people that are involved with this road have access in other directions. So nobody's going to be cut off from access to a road by closing this. It's really a street that will never be developed, but Bruners are building close to the line of the street, and this will help with their setback requirements. They're not gonna actually build on the street anyway, but it'll give them more room to, if they go ahead with the project.
And what happened in the 80s, South Brooklyn Avenue from Hutley, I think it's Hutley, down to O, was vacated. And then Elroy Street from Lake Street, which is County Road O, to Brooklyn was also vacated. But for whatever reason, this small chunk east of South Brooklyn was never vacated.
Yeah, it's only, like, how
So-
many feet is it? It's what, a couple hundred feet of road, or?
Maybe 200 feet
Yeah.
at most.
Okay. So we will take action on it next month?
40 days, so it'll probably have to be the month
August.
after.
Might have to be August 6th.
Okay,
You can't act on it until 40 days after it's introduced.
okay.
And the Catholic Church, and will certainly get notice and have a chance to look at this, and if they have any concerns with it, they'll express them, I'm sure, so.
So you need action or just the introduction?
Introduction. Probably should be a motion that we introduce this resolution. Just introduce it, what you're saying.
I'll make a motion to introduce the resolution to close a part of Elroy Street east of Brooklyn, or east of South Brooklyn.
I'll second that.
Motion made second to introduce the resolution to close part of Elroy Street east of South Brooklyn. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Go to letter P, discussion possible action and certified survey map of 4 city-owned lots on County Highway O.
I'm gonna have to have you guys share because I jammed up the printer. So, you guys can share, you guys can share, you guys can share. You know what? Alright.
Let's get those.
If anybody else wants to see.
That one before.
I have the original right here. This is the lands out on County Trunk Highway O that we're looking at selling and developing. And in order for us to truly sell these lots, you know, we have to have a survey so they're defined and whatnot. So it's 4 lots. This is the official survey. You know, the one you got was just the drawing. They range from, you know, 1.94 acres to I think 2.6 acres. They're all about 200 feet wide. They provide for easement access to the back farm field, as well as easement access for common tenant to their satellite dishes. And there's also, we put on here utility easements around each boundary of each property for, you know, gas, electric, fiber optics, cable, what have you.
So we would make a motion to accept this plat, is that
Yep.
the action required?
Yep, and then I'll sign it and then we'll go record it
Okay.
with registered deeds.
Now, I would make a motion to approve the certified survey map for the 4 city-owned lots on County Trunk Highway O.
A motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded for approval of the certified survey map. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Alright, Number Q, discussion possible action on sending letter to Chris Jensen about farming before the further lot.
We,
These are the lots we just talked about.
Yeah.
Chris planted corn up there, as you all know, this year, which created quite a stir when somebody thought they might wanna buy a lot. That offer is gone, but, my suggestion, I think Mark suggested that maybe next year, we write a letter this year for next year for Chris telling him you can't plant corn there. If he wants to plant anything, it's gotta be something like hay or grain or something, and he's totally planting at his own risk, that if we sell one of these lots, we aren't gonna reimburse him. The deal originally was when he sold the property to the city of Elroy, we stipulated that he could continue to farm it until such time as we told him he couldn't anymore, basically. So that's what he's been doing. But corn is kind of a miserable thing to have to deal with when you're trying to sell a lot up there, and hay would be much simpler. Also, he could probably get a crop or two before we'd have to send him on his way, and corn's just, you gotta wait till October, so. So my suggestion would be that I would send a letter to Chris saying next year, can't plant corn up there, if you wanna plant anything, you can plant hay. We're trying to sell these lots, understand that if we get an offer on one of the lots, we aren't gonna reimburse you for hay, you're putting it in on these lots at your own risk from here on. We have never charged him rent or anything, he's just been able to do it. And I think at this point in time, we wanna sell those lots. My second point would be, this year he has a corn crop up there, and I just checked with Bob Hart, an acre of corn is about $600. So I would suggest that if we, get an offer on a lot this year and we have to plow the corn under or something, we deal with Chris one way or another. If we have to pay, we have to pay him, if we don't, we don't. But we don't wanna put that position on a buyer. If somebody wanted to build a house before that corn is harvested, we certainly wanna get these lots sold. Get one sold and then the others will go. That's traditionally what's happened, so that would be my suggestions to you.
Do we need a motion, or do we just authorize the city attorney to write the letter?
I think you just got me to go ahead, I'll do it.
Okay. I would suggest having the city attorney write a letter to Chris Jensen about the farming restrictions on the county trunk hole lots. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is everybody? All right, Bill, if you'll take care of that, please. The letter R, discussion possible action on certified survey map for Bardo and J&J properties.
I don't have one, I was hoping I'd have one, from MSA for that, and I do not.
Okay, push that to the next meeting. Letter S, discussion possible action on additional street projects, mill and overlay of Western and Franklin Street.
You wanna take that, or will we discuss that streets, or?
Should we discuss that, Larry? But, I mean, at the streets meeting, Joe, I, and Larry talked about what additional projects we wanted to consider for the alternative bids. And I think from the streets department, our recommendation would be that we continue Franklin Street paving from the bridge on up to connect to the other project. That's maybe, what, 200 feet maybe? So it would be, it would just be replacement of the pavement, and then the other project would be on Western, if you know where Western is, up way on the hill, connecting between the project we did last year and the project that's ongoing this year. So those would be the two streets that we would like to accept the alternative bids on. The Franklin Street project was gonna be about $10,000 to $11,000, because the county's gonna pick up about $6,000 of that cost. The one on the hill on Western was gonna be about $45,000 to $50,000. I think it was $46,000. So that would be the recommendation of the streets department. So Mark, do we need to put forth that in a motion
Yes.
to the council? The streets, or the streets committee would like to make a motion, or would recommend to the council, that we proceed with the Franklin Street paving and the Western Avenue paving as bid alternates.
You making that as a motion from your committee?
Yes.
The one thing I forgot was, when you come up here to the stop sign, you got cement right up here at the end. And if the county's gonna do that, they recommend taking that cement out because it's starting to break up. And dig down deeper up here and put more asphalt in for the trucks when they start out on the hill. 'Cause that's, I guess, initially what the cement was there for, unless you wanna re-cement that.
I think that's already in the design, that when they come up the hill, I think at the last 30 feet, they went, I can't remember, 7 inches of asphalt or whatever it was, but they did address that.
Yeah, okay. Well, Dennis was just talking to me about it.
Yeah. So that's my motion.
Okay, so we do have a
I'll
motion.
second. I'll second it.
So we have a motion made and seconded for the bid alternates for Franklin Street and Western Avenue. Anybody have any further discussion?
So these prices aren't included in what we were already gonna do for streets?
They were as bid alternates. And we did not accept any bid alternates at that time. We just accepted the base bid.
So now where's this money coming from?
We have, the funding that we took with our refinancing. We took $500,000 in additional, money, of which we're, have to use within 3 years on street projects. And so we're looking at spending about 60,000, 55 to 60,000 on projects. In addition to, we'll be spending about 190,000 on the existing projects, so that'll be about 250,000 in street projects for this year, which would leave us about $250,000 for street projects next year. And we prioritize the next streets as Royal, Academy by the library, and Cedar by Bardo, and then Kittleson by Georgetown. So, and then we're hoping that we'll get a grant to fix Cedar. So that's the priority.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, for the authorized funds, roll call please.
Huber,
Yes.
Fost,
Yes.
Clipstein,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Garvin.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Letter T, expenditures. We have checks 34,702, 34,771, total amount of $73,282.40.
And let's add this one for the surveying of the lots.
And an additional 2,000 to the Excelsior Group for the surveying of the city lots.
I would make a motion to approve the expenditures as noted on the report, plus the cost of the survey.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded to approve expenditures as presented. Any further discussion? Any other question?
Yep.
Roll call please.
Fost,
Yes.
Clipstein,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Garvin,
Yes.
Huber.
Yes.
Motion passes, bills are paid. We have the,
What's going on?
that's,
I suppose I can put it over here.
alright, we go to letter U, discussion possible action on library budget overrun due to renovation projects.
All right. I was the one who, as we're going through the numbers of finishing out the year, with the auditors, finishing out our books, and looking at the project at hand, and at the end of each year, or periodically throughout the year, as we kept a running tally with the library on their project, you know, we would ask for a certain level of funds to come back to the city to reimburse for the, for the construction project that they had going on. And just looking at the 2013 numbers, when all was said and done, I came up with an amount where the city had budgeted $77,576 towards the library operations, and in the end, the city contributed $117,009, and so that difference is $39,433. Okay, so we looked at it, and what I went through is all the numbers out of our accounting system. In capital outlay in the year 2011, what was spent was $118,171. In 2012 was $91,941, and in 2013 was $240,535, for a grand total of $450,648. I asked Mary for her spreadsheet on numbers. Her total came out to be $451,364. So, you know, we're off by about $700. But you know, we can analyze that if we want to get down to the penny. But so what that is the total capital outlay in our system is approximately $451,000, and the total amount we received to date is $374,366. So that's actually a difference of $76,000, $282. So my original number was a $39,000, 433, but that was only accounting for 2013. When I look at the full 3 years of project dollars, that the library has only contributed at $374,000 towards the project, when the end result of the project was $451,000. And so that's why we're here. We started this discussion last month, and we're coming to it here this month to figure out, you know, why we're at this number, why is there a difference, and who's gonna pay that difference. And there was talk about you know, mold remediation as part of the project, and the mold remediation was done in 2012 or 2011, and that amount is $10,697.55. So the one thing we came up with is, you know, what are some ideas to, you know, for these funds to you know, be balanced out, because right now, you know, the city has fronted that amount of money for the project. And just to remind everybody that when this was approved back in December of 2010, that the approval of a community room with kitchen and such was not approved by the council. Okay, that was not approved by the council to put in a community room. It was about repairing the water damage, the mold issues, and cleaning up that area. But that was never part of the deal. So to me, that needs to be explained as to at what point was it authorized to do a community room, and under whose guidance, and also why no one came back to the city council regarding that. So I guess my top choice for the payback of this is that the library holds a fundraiser to garner their amount, and the amount is yet to be determined. If you want to use $39,000, that's one thing. If you want to use the $76,000, that's another. If you wanna say that the, general fund pays for the mold remediation at the $10,700, you know, that's a way to go as well. So there is, several choices we have as far as, pushing forward with this and getting reimbursement, for these expenses. I'll start there.
I would like to add a few more comments. First, I'd like to address everybody on the library board and Norm in particular who spoke on behalf. I use the library a lot, okay, and I've known Mary all my life and John all my life and things like that. So, I mean, I agree. The library is a treasure for the city, okay, and the library board should be absolutely commended for the job they've done, as should Mary and things like that. I raised this issue when I looked at the audit report, because as I'm the finance chairman, okay, that's of the council. I said, well, I thought all the library work was gonna be done by contributions, okay? So I tried to separate myself from the personal feelings that I have for a lot of the people on the library board and say, well, that doesn't make sense to me, okay? I'm kinda new to the council, and I said, I thought all the capital work down at the library is being done by contributions, and the books didn't balance. So that's, I sat down with Mark, said, Mark, tell me what's going on here, okay? Well, and that's kind of led us to this point. So I don't think, I mean, the building turned out beautiful, okay? And there were obviously, I mean, I was down there looking at it with John and Mary, and they'd give me a tour and things like that. I was looking at how pretty it was, okay? I wasn't thinking about dollars. Maybe I should have asked about dollars then. But from my perspective is, it's a cost issue, okay, and nothing more than that, okay? Somehow the city, be it the library board, the council, or the city, you know, has to reconcile how we're gonna pay for this, okay? So that's me wearing a finance hat, okay? So, you know, whether the number is 30 or 40 or 50,000, right now the general fund, the taxpayers of the city have paid the bills, is that correct? I mean,
Yes.
we paid for it, okay? So the general fund, all of us that pay city taxes, have paid the bills, okay? So now the discussion just becomes between the library and the council, or other groups, I guess, donors or whatever, as to where that money's gonna come from. So, from my perspective, I mean, hats off to the library board. I mean, you volunteer a lot of time and you do a lot of great things. That's not to me an issue at all. All I need to do is reconcile how we're gonna pay for this, okay? And Mark has thrown out a couple of ideas. Obviously, at this point, your donation pot is empty. You've expended all those funds. I believe that's correct, isn't it, Mark? I mean, there's nothing
That's
left.
for them to answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing left in your donation fund, I don't believe, is there? I mean,
There's 19,000, but that was donations mostly from the memorials from the Brady.
yeah, okay. So for me, like I say, I mean, I've been using the library since I was probably 4 years old, so, and that's a lot of years, and, you know, it's a great building, and we wanna keep it as a great building, okay? But, you know, how do we reconcile it? I mean, do we, right now, general fund, our taxpayers have paid for it, okay? I guess we could leave it like that and just say, okay, it's a wash, okay? But the taxpayers didn't okay it, the council didn't okay it, okay? So I've got a problem with that the council 3 or 4 years ago, 2010, said, yeah, it's a city building, go ahead, and things like that. Now, what I'd like to hear, you know, Mark, and I'm sure Mary has gone through a lot of these spreadsheets and things like that, and you're very familiar with all the work that was done down there. If, in my opinion, if the library board would have come back to the council in 2010 or 11 or 12 or 13 and said, well, we've got mold, we really think that's a maintenance issue. That's really not part of, you know, the project, okay? I could probably buy the mold remediation, okay, as being a maintenance issue. If there was a leaky wall, and I know there was, okay, remembering what the old library looked like back in the 40s and 50s, you know, maybe that's a maintenance issue, okay? And maybe, you know, maybe that's a city cost, just like if we were gonna fix City Hall, okay? If we had leaky wall in the back here or something like that. Now, we didn't know about it, so we didn't budget for it. But like most problems that come up like this, we're trying to look back 3 or 4 years. Well, we can't go back 3 or 4 years and make a special assessment on everybody's taxes. We have to deal with this year's budget, and we don't have $40,000 in our budget, okay? So, I'm kind of being redundant here, but I guess if someone from the library board would wanna speak up and say, okay, yeah, we had a $450,000 project, and so far the library is short $30 or $40 or $50,000, and the general fund has made up that difference. Is there something in there, other than mold remediation, that if you had come to us in 2011 or 12 and say, boy, this is really a maintenance issue, or a, you know, something other than new construction, okay? Anybody, that was kind of a jumbled question. John, I know you're gonna answer it, but.
Well, first of all, I can't visualize where just the 10,000 came from. That might have been for just the mold, but as far as the drainage was concerned, we had to dig on the outside, tuck point the walls, waterproof the walls on the outside. The walls were actually crumbling on the inside, so we had to do all of that, and as I recall, that was in the neighborhood of around 60 to 70,000, somewheres along the line. And again, I'm just going on memory. The other thing that cropped up as far as I was concerned, it seemed that, and I neglect to know the name of the fund, Mary, what do we get about the 30,000?
The non-resident reimbursement?
Non-resident reimbursement, up until probably 2009 or 2010, we had that over and above what the city was giving us for a budget.
But that's for operation costs.
Nope.
Not necessarily. That was over and above what the city budgeted us. And then all of a sudden, that was included in our total budget. So really, we were depending upon a portion of that to set aside so that we could use it for our renovation.
Well, when I came on the council 2 years ago, I asked Mark that, you know, when the county contributes money, I thought that was kind of mandated, that only be used for operation costs, not capital costs.
We went through that at one of the city council meetings sometime back, that when the county reimburses the city or the library, that is used for operational costs. And that was done back when Justin was the administrator. Go ahead, Mary.
Up until 2011, there was a state statute that said that the municipalities were expected to maintain the libraries within a 3% of the last budgets. You could cut it 3%, but you couldn't do anything more than that, or you could raise it 3%, the library support. In 2012, I believe it was, or 11, the state cut that out. Up until that point, we had X number of dollars for the library budget, and then we had the non-resident reimbursement, which is funds that are generated from use of the library by people outside. And those funds come back, a proportional amount of them come back, and they are for the library board's use. It's required that we turn them over to the city, however they are to be handled by the library board. Up until 2012, I believe it was, 2011, that was on top of our budget. Then when that was rescinded by the Senate, by the state, at that point, then the city of Elroy came in and said, no, we're taking that amount of money and we're taking that out of the budget. So whereas until that time we'd had like 90,000 plus the 25 or 30,000, we had the 90,000 minus the 25 or 30,000. And so when we started our project we were assuming that those funds would be available throughout the course of the project. And what happened is during the middle of the project, those funds went away.
Well, the
The-
way,
Sorry. The statute pertaining to this specifies that the reimbursement is calculated as a proportion of operating expenses, not that it is to be used for operating expenses. That may be where the confusion is coming from.
The only question I have in the whole thing is, when you knew you didn't have enough money, how come you didn't come to the city and tell us you didn't have enough money?
Because we thought we did have enough money. Because we thought we had enough with all our savings and the donations, other things that we had gotten. It was only in March, we understood that we had spent more in 2013 than what the city had set aside. And that when that happened, they would come to us and say, give us a check for the difference. And we did this several different times, $100,000 one time, because we had had it in a CD at the Royal Bank. In March, they said to wait until the audit was finished, and the city would come to us and tell us what the amount was that we should do. We were told 25,000. We wrote a check for 25,000. At that point, we assumed that everything was kosher. It was only after that that I heard that there was an additional $40,000 requested.
well, the only thing I have a problem with is, at that time I was only on the council, and we, as a council, voted to help you get rid of the mold, clean up the basement, and use it for storage. You were adamant at wanting a community room down there, and we, as a council, voted no. You came back to the council and asked for more money for the community room, and we said no. We were not going to give any more money for to add a community room. And I've got those papers at home. I can dig them out. It'll take me some time to get them again, and I can bring them in and show them to you. The minutes of the council meetings. And maybe Mark can get them quicker than I can. Because this has been discussed over and over at council meetings about the community room. The city council voted to help you renovate that for storage. And we said no, we did not need any more community rooms in the city. And we said we would not fund any money towards a community room.
If we look at it from just a budgeting standpoint, okay, I mean, if the finance committee has to find $40,000, and that's really what we're faced with, okay? I mean, if the council was gonna do it, I mean, the only thing we do is we go out and borrow $40,000, okay? And pay it back over a 4-year note or a 5-year note or something like that with Royal Bank, okay? I don't think we're ready to do that, okay? But that's an option, we could do that, but that's really what we're faced with, okay? So as taxpayers, which most everybody in this room is, okay, I don't think we really wanna do that, okay? Now the library board could go out and borrow $40,000 and somehow raise $10,000 every year, okay? And pay back the loan or whatever, but it's $40,000 that we just don't have. We took it out of our fund balance, okay, and paid the bills, but we didn't have it budgeted. Now, again, just like Larry said, if we had known, and you could probably say the same thing, I mean, if we had all known that, the whole project was gonna cost this much, and I don't know how much the community center or the community room costs, okay? but it's probably pretty significant, it's a nice room, okay? And I don't know how, like John was talking about the walls, I don't know how much the walls and, you know, 50, 60,000, I don't know what that number is, okay?
I think we came up with 70,
Is it
68, 70,000.
Okay,
I presented that to the city council last
so,
month.
so it's kind of a trade-off, I mean, if
Yeah.
you wouldn't have done the community center, there obviously would have been more than enough money, to do all the mold and the walls and things like that.
Perhaps I need to clarify a little bit. The community center, the community room that you're talking about, the only things, we did add a kitchenette in order to make it useful. However, with the exception of the kitchenette, all of the things that we had to do there we would have had to do anyway. The only difference between what the community center and the storage room is that we have linoleum on the floor. We have the same woodworking, we have the same wood finishes, we have the same amount of heat. We did add a kitchenette, thinking that it would be better to plan to do it now than in the future. So the costs of adding that to a community room, turning it into a community room, I don't believe are excessive.
Do you have an
But had
idea
you
what they
not
are?
made a community room down there, Mary, you wouldn't have had to have handicap accessible down there.
That was one of the issues we spoke with the architect, when he said when we had to dig out the entire wall all the way around in order to get down to get the outside wall to repair the walls from crumbling in. At that time, it would make more sense to make it handicap accessible at that time, rather than filling it back in, and then sometime in the future, if we were gonna use it for public building, to dig it all back out again. And so, yes, that did add a little bit extra for that, but it was,
Mary, you said you didn't think that the cost of this was too much, but can you quantify what that cost is, and also quantify what the ADA access was? Do you have those numbers? Or or a rough estimate on that?
how much for kitchenette? Is the plumbing?
Well, linoleum and everything that you did down there.
Yeah, the linoleum was essentially the same cost as putting in carpeting. I don't know, how much does a kitchenette cost to put in? 15,000 maybe?
How much?
I don't know, 15?
I didn't hear you.
15,000 maybe at the top. All the furniture in it, the refrigerator, everything, that was all donated.
Mm-hmm.
There is, well, that's for storage, never mind, that's a decommission. I don't know how much the plumbing and the electric for the kitchen cost, that would have been the major cost for it.
But there was some cost, whatever that cost was, of the work that you did and of the ADA access. I think one of the things that's troubling, I wasn't on the board back then, I'm the new baby in town anyway, as far as longevity, but, you know, it seems to me that is one of the things, is you come up with this expense and this change when the language here specifically says not to do that particular part. And so there's that portion of this, and then there's the portion, and I'm not following through on all the numbers, that you didn't know what it was, or you thought you had enough money and then all of a sudden you didn't. I don't know if that's a lack of frequent enough communication with the city, or just a miscommunication, or what, but that seems to me the two biggest bugaboos about this whole thing, to where we got caught flat-footed with this bill that, as Jim was talking now, we gotta figure out who we're not gonna, or what we're not gonna fund now. And so there was that cost involved there that some way did not get to hear in a timely fashion.
Joe, you're new to this and you're hearing all this for the first time, but that's the same thing, but you're hearing it brand new, you got no history or what,
But the thing is, I don't know if I'm hearing all of it.
well, Good point, good point.
You know, that's the thing. So, I mean, in my opinion, the money has to come from there back to the city somehow or another.
Are the Mary Brady funds designated funds to specific things?
1,000 or 2 of them were asked to go for materials.
How much did you say there was?
$10,050.
Is there any possibility you could dedicate that room downstairs as to her and use part of those funds to help this out?
Ghibli's family gave us $25,000 for the basement, and so that's why it's the Lee Community Room. It would be kind of hard to do that. It would be possible to speak with Pat Brady, yeah, Patty, and see if, you know, if they would be willing to let us use it for different things.
Or if there's some other offset you could do next year or something and use those funds and make something back so the city could get something back? I don't know, I'm just looking for, there's a little money there that would help and everything's gonna help.
Are there any other suggestions from the library board or from Mary? I mean, we all pay taxes, you know, and somehow we gotta find this 40, is there anything else that the library can do?
I'm sorry. I have weird ideas.
This is my assistant, Sarah.
Who's,
Nice to meet you.
sorry.
Sarah Huggins.
What if in next year's budget, the non-resident reimbursement is allowed to go for the overrun on, since that was what was planned to cover it previously?
Well, and right now it's about $25,000 or $30,000. That's about the number, right, Mary?
It's gonna be about 25,000 next year.
Okay, so what we get from the county is about $25,000 or $30,000. Well, sure, we could say we could put that amount toward paying off this overrun on the capital project, but then you're gonna have to live with that much less on the operating budget, okay? So, that would leave you extremely short-handed or short-houred at the library. That means cutting back on library expenses and things like that, so.
And services.
And, yeah, exactly.
Another thing is when the architect recommended that you guys put in that handicap accessible, how come it wasn't brought back, I mean, to the council, you know, or?
Well, that was one thing, and I brought it up at the library board meetings, that I don't know who was on the, represented the,
Dorothy Helger.
city council on the library board before I got on there. But when I got appointed and attended my first couple meetings, and I'm still kinda lost. I mean, nobody from the council ever came back and brought anything back to the table.
It was Dorothy Holgerson before you, and before that it was George Vukich.
Okay, and
And who
And
gave
they-
the okay for the architect to go ahead and do that?
Yes.
No, who gave the okay for that?
The library board, with council members sitting in on it.
Any other ideas as taxpayers?
Well, when Mark first brought this line item up, he suggested a possible way out with fundraising. Do you have any sort of idea on what amount could be raised under whatever, under that basic idea? Is that selling cookies, or is that something that?
You do have a kitchen.
That's a lot of cookies.
I know, but that's what I'm trying to get at, is how realistic is that as a solution, and what kind of money could be raised in what sort of time?
I mean, libraries are always fundraising, and sometimes we get really surprised for the $20,000 donation, and so a lot of times people will give 500, 100. We can go back to starting another fundraising or solicit private loans, or we can give it our best shot, I guess.
You know, and it's not unusual, I have learned this over the last 2 years, that, I mean, the city has a lot of different accounts. Okay, and right now, the library fund owes general fund about $40,000. Okay, now that's not unusual. Mark moves money around, like say if the water department is short on money, maybe the sewer department will fund something, and then the water department pays them back over 1 or 2 or 3 years, or whenever the money is there, the electric department and things like that. So it's not, and the auditor typically does this all at the end of the year, and that's kind of what we're dealing with here. The auditor did her final analysis, and then in February or so, when Mark gets the first look, said, boy, you know, there's a shortfall here. I mean, is that even reasonable, Mark? I mean, if the general fund carried this $40,000, and say within a 3-year, 5-year time period, that'll be paid back through donations, fundraising, whatever other options are available from the library to pay back the general fund that $40,000. Is that even feasible or viable? Can we even in fact do that? I mean,
John, you're a good cook, why don't you, put on like a pancake?
Right now, if this meeting goes on any further, I'm gonna have to find a restroom because of the condition I'm in.
And, you know, a couple fundraisers that way, I mean, you're noted through Elroy and around the area as a fantastic cook, so there
Thank
you
you, I
go.
appreciate
Okay.
that.
comment?
But before we go
You
on
mentioned,
the fund, excuse me, Joanne,
go ahead.
you had your hand up.
Well, I would just, you were talking about the 39,400 or whatever it is, a little less than 40,000. But then I heard earlier, Mark mention a higher number. Are we gonna be surprised with, in a few weeks, in a month or so, saying, oh no, you owe more than 39,000?
Well, those numbers go back 3 years. I mean, if you go back and balance the books from 2011,
Well,
12, and 13. So,
39,000 was bad enough.
yeah, exactly.
I just don't want any more surprises.
I would agree with you.
Because this was a
39,000 was
surprise
bad
to all
enough.
of us.
So, I mean, at
Us
this
as
point,
well. It's not just a surprise to you,
Right.
it's a surprise to us as well.
yeah. So, I mean, it's all past tense, okay? We can't go back to 2011 tax roll and collect that money. We can't do that. Same thing with 2012. 2013 is passed, okay? We can't go back and collect that money. So, I mean, I think at this point, my focus anyway is on the $40,000, okay? Now, we could lump them all together, okay, and said, you know, the project cost $450, library board has paid $375 or whatever that number is, okay? But right now, I'm looking at the 2013 cost differential, which is the $39,000. So I guess I would ask the library board, I mean, do you think general fund is paid for it, like other departments? Would you take on the responsibility over the next 5 years of paying that back? Or if it isn't there, we could reduce, say every 5 years, we could reduce the cost of the contribution from the city to the library by $8,000.
Well, right now you're paying salaries plus 6,000.
Well, so that doesn't seem very reasonable to me, but I mean, that's what it's, I'm trying to find the money, okay?
Could it be a possibility if we went back and looked at our funds to see what we could come up with to pay the city immediately and then work out a payment plan after that on the balance?
That's what I'm looking for, okay? I think, I would move in that direction, okay? I personally, I'm not speaking for the council, but, I mean, it's, like I say, I mean, we're all the city of Elroy, okay? I mean, and so we're all trying to we gotta pay for the project. It's like building a new house, and building a new house, it costs a little bit more, you know? So somehow you gotta pay for it. And I personally would like that approach, okay? Where, yes, maybe you do have $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 right now, and let's say in 5 years, the auditor has your little note there every year, you know, it's gotta be a contribution somewhere. So I,
think in fairness to you, we'll have to set the amount. We aren't gonna be able to change it.
Yeah.
If we agree on an amount that you're gonna pay back, that's it. We aren't gonna come back and say,
Right.
we're not-
Yeah,
yeah,
that's-
to answer that question, I think
They
that
can
needs to
pay
be
it
clear.
down quicker,
Pardon?
and they can pay it down quicker.
sure,
Yeah, but the question was, it's 39 now, but there was this other figure.
Right.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and,
it needs to be
they,
defined
and
right
we,
now.
we have to have that settled
Okay.
forever.
Is, now, I spoke my piece way too much here, okay? And
We're used to it.
I know it.
And it's
John,
fine.
I'm just really confused with this idea that I went over to the bank in March or February and had them write out a check for 25,000, and I was told at that time we were all paid up. How could that have changed so rapidly? And I realize auditors come in, but then if auditors had to check or catch it,
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers and I assume the numbers are right, and Mary, I mean, what the project cost, Mark said 450,000, Mary says 451, so there's no question about what the project cost, okay? And over the last 3 years, you know, there's that cost differential, John, so that's all I can tell you, so.
I have a thing, could we take a 5-minute recess, let the board go somewhere and just do a 5-minute talk about what we can do and come back to the council and see what we can do? Do we have 5 minutes to talk to the board?
Sure, I think,
Yeah,
I think that's great, I mean,
Okay,
working toward a solution.
you want to do that?
Can they go in the, can they go in the
You
back?
might want to point John to the back.
Yeah, there's chairs, I don't know, are there
Well, we
chairs
can
back there,
stand
Mark?
There's
behind
chairs.
it.
Oh,
Let me see if it's back there.
all we can provide are chairs, we had to sell the table, we're short on money.
Such a deal I make for you!
Yeah, you've got extra
We have
tables.
three tables down the basement of the library. Amish made. Oak.
See, that was one of the problems we had. I remember now coming to the meeting, and every time the mayor would ask for a report from different committees, no report. Nothing to report this month.
So
They didn't
you,
meet.
what number are you going with? Are you going with the 39,433, or are you going with 76,282?
I would go with a 39, I think
Well, where's that other money coming from?
well,
The other
The-
35,000.
we
The
don't want any more
difference is,
surprises.
the 39,433 is the deficit for just 2013. When I look at the project as a whole, the capital outlay that we paid out over 3 years was $451,000. We've only received from the library $374,000. So the life of the project is a deficit of $76,000. The deficit just for 2013 is $39,433.
So the past,
it's,
past
And-
years have been paid out of city.
Yeah.
And, you know,
It's
That-
already
that's
been-
what I
It has
want.
already gone through
Yeah,
and the tax
yeah.
levy and
In-
everything that's set.
in kind of a roundabout way, we paid, general fund, we paid about $35,000 in 2011 and 12 for mold remediation, fixing the wall and things like that, whether or not that's the right number or not. But that's in effect what happened, because the general fund paid for it. We didn't call out specifically that we're paying for mold or this, we just paid $35,000 for it. So this year, we've got $39,000, 2013, we've got the $39,000 left. So I would say, are the general fund contribution for these maintenance items, mold, fixing the leaky wall, amounts to about, $35,000, or somewhere in that range. Is So we're left with the 39,000. Okay, that was the remainder of the project in 2013. And that almost kind of gets back to where Larry was last month. He said, you know, I could take a look at this and say, well, knowing what I know right now, maybe we split the cost between general fund and the library. Now, we didn't have all the numbers last month, but that's kind of where we've ended up, or not, we haven't ended up there, but that's kind of what I'm talking
Well,
about
if
here.
we're using that 77,000, and they're gonna find a way to do the 39, in
Yeah.
effect, that's where
Yeah,
we're at.
yeah,
I
exactly.
think the 77,000 is so long ago, I don't think it's
Well,
reasonable to
and
go
the
back.
part of that bothers me is, it seems like the council was at fault to some degree, because the council rep on the library board wasn't bringing back the proper information and feeding the council to be able to make a better decision.
And I agree, and you know, whether, no matter, one of us could have been on that library board, and as the project progresses, you know, any remodeling project, you know, I mean, you get into it, you know, and all of a sudden the cost is 300,000, and oh God, we got a leaky wall, or we got a bad wall, you know, what are $330,000 and 348,000, I mean, it inches up there, so really until the last 15% of the project, you really don't know what the final cost, that's no justification, but those things do happen, so.
But the interesting fact is that on the authorized by library board, they authorized almost 475,000 towards the project. So where do they think they're coming up with the money?
Yeah.
And that's off a Mary's spreadsheet, not mine.
The only thing without Mary here, I mean, the only thing I could say was she was probably counting on that county contribution, the extra 25 to $30,000. I mean, it sounds like that was probably part of her cash flow.
But if that was, the change was made there between 2011 and 2012, where they lost that thing, that should have signaled, you know,
I would
beat
agree.
feet towards the council.
I would agree,
Well, I don't know just what the cost of the community room ended up costing, but I know Mary came to a meeting and asked for more money to finish and do the community room, and we said no. We had given the amount of money we were going to give to help get rid of the mold, clean up the basement, get rid of the water, and use it strictly for storage. And she went on and they went on and did the community room even after we said no. At that time I was on the council and Dorothy was on the library board, and
It does seem that we need to have stronger oversight.
Oh, yeah.
I say, it seems like we do need to set up stronger oversight.
Easy to say in hindsight.
Sure.
I mean, we could,
Yeah,
you know.
we can't do it now, but I'm
Yeah,
talking,
I mean,
I'm not talking backwards, I'm talking forwards.
yeah, that's what I keep saying when, you know, they have a meeting or if Mary was got something, she should let me know so I can bring it to the council.
And this is kind of like one of those one-time situations. I mean, the library is the only building, the only city building in town that ever gets donations per se, and once in a while the museum gets a little bit of money, but it was one of those.
And they're the only group that has complete autonomy over spending their funds.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I mean, they're in charge of, the library's in charge of the library, in charge of the library funds.
Well,
But now they've exceeded those funds.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why this is unusual.
Correct.
yeah, I mean, it's,
so if they've got that sort, if the library has that kind of autonomy, then have they always had that, or has this
Always.
recently been given to them?
Statutorily, always.
Okay.
But you're not gonna have another building project like this in our lifetimes. I mean,
No,
This is
I
a
know,
major,
but if they've got that sort of autonomy, then, boy, it just seems like somebody was not paying close enough attention to have this overrun.
Well, no question about that.
If you're-
Yeah.
Well, what I
if
don't
you're paying
understand,
them-
what I don't understand is a city the size of Elroy has a larger library budget or yeah, I guess that's the word, than Boston, New Lisbon. I mean, you look at their budget and what their wages and stuff are, and we're way out of line with their, how they're being paid, their hours and stuff.
I don't think I agree with that.
Well,
That-
I
That's
got
not
to
really,
question that too.
that's
Yeah,
not
well,
really.
you could go to Boston or go to,
Well,
or just call over to the library and ask them.
Well, we did, 2 years ago, we got a spread, Mark put together a spreadsheet, so, but I don't think, I mean, we can discuss that at a different time, but I mean,
Right.
Mark's got the spreadsheet of what Hillsborough, Winnewauk, and Lisbon pays the librarians and things like that, and I didn't see any discrepancy there, as far as wages and things like that.
I think if we can work this out in good faith between all of us, that's the way to do it. I mean, we got good
Yeah.
people all over the place here,
Yep,
and mistakes were made, and if we can work it out, I think, head that direction.
But I would hate for us to lose the quality, or degraded quality of the library because we're a smaller town.
Well, yeah.
oh, yeah, I mean,
Well, I
library,
would too, I would want to lose the library.
been the best building in town for 100 years. We've had a very open conversation. We were originally gonna go into closed session.
I don't see any need for
I
that.
don't see any reason, I mean, this is such an open conversation, I don't see any reason to go into closed session. Everything's been said, I think.
Well, isn't that gonna depend on what they come back out
Well,
with?
that, good point, Mark, good point.
Keeps you awake.
Oh, yeah, right. How do you sit in a rocking chair and not rock?
I don't suppose we could jump ahead on the agenda, could we, and just come back to this
Just look and see
topic, can
what
we do
else
that,
is
or
on.
not? Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah. So we're going to bypass
Where are we at?
number 8,
Go down to
closed
the
session, correct?
Yeah, just,
Everybody's in it.
yeah, just go
Just
down to
bypass
9.
it.
Go down 9 reports.
Alright.
Oh, utility commission, that's me, I guess.
Yep.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to report, we didn't discuss a lot of things, or I shouldn't say a lot of things, there was not much of a discussion. Bill didn't have much to say, except everything seems to be going well, and, one thing he did mention was that, well, I don't know if he mentioned it or who, but the ditch along Ackerman Road out there is not deep enough when they, run the well and run the water down the ditch, and it isn't deep enough, and Craig is working and getting his things done that he wanted done. He was working down here by, Sprinkman the other day, so. We did discuss some tree trimming that that, we didn't get very far on that yet, so. That's something more that we gotta bring up with him and Jamie to get together on. That's all I got on this.
I got in on the tail end of that conversation. Were you talking about the new well and the ditch on that side? Very important to my daughter, because if that ditch doesn't stay deep enough, that water comes over the road and all of a sudden it's in her basement.
That's what yeah.
Well, it's a rare, they had to run the water out of the well for testing purposes. That's not a common occurrence for the water to be run to the ditch.
You're right, but
So,
in the case of a downpour, that ditch was not big enough on that side to
Sure.
hold the water off the hill.
Sure.
And consequently, even before my son-in-law died, there was water in the basement that came.
Yeah, 'cause it comes right across the road there by
Right,
well, just below Karen Least and right in
right.
that whole area right there.
Okay, we do have a proposal. And this, are you ready? This would be contingent on a open meeting for the library board. But we would like to, and because we could come up with $20,000 for now, and then we would like to pay off the rest in $5,000 increments in the next 4 years. Without interest.
You mean you're not gonna make a pancake breakfast or anything for us, John?
They never said that they weren't gonna do that, they just said that's how they're gonna pay it.
We'll have $20,000 that we can pay you now.
Yeah.
And then at the $5,000, maybe you people will put in $1. No, seriously, $5,000 a year for the next 4 years.
I think that, you know, I think that's a very good play, I'm very satisfied with that.
I am.
And we've got the extra so that we can do what we need to do as city under that agreement, Mark. We got enough slop to, for lack of a better word, to, you know, we can get by without that 20,000 and still get the stuff done we need.
But we've got fund balance.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
the money came out of our fund balance, okay, so,
Yep, so-
yes. Okay.
well, it'll come out of borrowed money. That's where it's gonna come from. It's gonna come out of borrowed money, cause our budget is set.
Yeah, exactly.
So how can you say it's slop or
Well,
just extra? It's gotta be cut somewhere else in the meantime in short term, or it's coming out of the borrowed money we took for street projects. I mean, that's the only choices where it's coming from. I mean, we gotta hope that we can save money or collect more in like permit revenue, but
We're gonna get the
That's all
20,000
we
in, and there's gonna be a $20,000 loan against the general fund,
mhm.
okay? So, which will be paid back in four equal increments. So,
I might add to that, and my fault for not adding it, unless we could pay it ahead of time.
sure, and we would accept that.
I would hope so.
I'll make a motion.
Is everybody, is that agreeable to everybody? And the library board?
We have to have an open meeting
Right.
first.
To approve it, so it won't be, we won't be able to write a check tomorrow.
Right, I understand
Yeah,
that.
okay.
And so I make sure that we're all in agreement on here, and we're all working on the same number.
Yes, we want that number.
$40,000. Mark?
Okay, I'll make a motion that after the library board meets, will accept their offer of paying $20,000 and then 5,000 every year for 4 years after that, right?
And I would second that.
And that will completely resolve the issue of the overrun, or whatever you wanna call it.
Yes.
Right? Put that in there too, I think.
Okay. Motion made, seconded for the $40,000 overrun on the library board project for agreement between the council and library board. Any further discussion?
Didn't you second?
Yes, I did.
Roll call,
Yes.
Yes.
Beverly?
Yes, we have the motion and second. Further discussion? Mark, we do a roll call, please?
Clipstein,
Yes.
Krieger,
Yes.
Garvin,
Yes.
Huber,
Yes.
Folks.
Am I still welcome at the next library board meeting?
It all depends upon whether you bring coffee or not.
Don't use this.
He
file.
can't make it.
No, don't.
I think we got everything discussed, hashed out here, so.
Thank you very much.
Go into closed session, so. Okay. Thank you all for attending tonight.
And Mary, if you ever try to get a hold of me, I don't have a computer right now, mine crashed, so you'll
Okay.
have to call me on the phone.
We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Back to reports. Streets.
That's still me too. Okay,
Yeah, good, Norm.
I forgot what we,
Well, yeah, the streets projects have started, all three streets, Franklin and Western and Royal.
right,
And then we approved the two bid alternates, and that was, and the summer help has been hired. Everything's on a go. I think that
Right.
was pretty much it, I think, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Ordinance?
We talked about the, ordinance for regulating firearms and concealed weapons. Bill is gonna revise it just a little bit and bring it back. But otherwise, it's gonna be it's basically the adopted Wisconsin statute of concealed carry. That's what we would be adopting if the council agrees to adopt it. And then, we talked about the process for updating the code of the ordinance, and we're gonna review chapter by chapter on that, and Bill Jefferson suggested that we do like an hour just sitting down and reviewing the different chapters and bringing them up to code.
Parks?
We just discussed, the canoe thing, right,
Yeah.
for the most part? And I guess we're gonna try to find some pricing on canoes. And then, of course, we're gonna talk to all the organizations like the Fire Department, the Lions, whatnot, about what we can do to make it bigger and better. Just camping or activities, whatever.
What's the latest on the canoe access point?
The latest on the canoe access point is it's mixed. When I talked to the guy over the phone, he thought it was a good idea. When he went and visited the site, he then thought it was a bad idea. Excuse me, and since then I haven't heard a peep from the DNR.
Well, where were you gonna?
at Thompson Park, at the parking lot off of
Okay.
71. That would be our entrance point.
Then you just go down that little,
Yep. Yep, like
right,
30
you
feet.
didn't like that?
I don't know, who knows?
Well, I was out with Will Stites a couple days ago, he was DNR water rights, and we were looking at a different section of that, and I just asked what he knew. And he'd said that he'd heard from whoever it is that was talking to you, that if there was a pier put out as opposed to some sort of an actual landing, it wouldn't even require a permit.
They haven't even talked to us about that, but I mean, I don't know how you'd put a pier in there without.
Well, I don't know if it'd be parallel to the bank or how it was, but there was just, he was just telling me what he had heard.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we could do a pier. It's not our property though. That's the funny thing. That's why we're asking for permission. It's not our
That's
property.
DNR property,
It's
isn't it?
DNR property. Otherwise, I'd go slap a pier down there without question.
I don't think you need to do that, that's actually a good spot, I don't know why he didn't.
We wanted to build a nice wharf, you know, with a slanted ramp so you could slide your
Yeah.
canoe down.
No, it's, you know, it's a 1.5, 2 foot drop from the bank down into the water
I know.
itself. That might be,
Yeah,
that might be a little more than what most people wanna do.
right.
I do it with waders every fall.
You know, and talking about the
They
river,
walk through their waders on, maybe.
river cleanup,
How much effort?
has anybody ever considered contacting
So you're not getting ducks in there.
Tommy Thompson?
Muskrats.
He's got a big dozer. And do you suppose that maybe he's an Elroy boy, that he would donate that, and his, Dale Jensen runs it for him, but they could go down that river in half a day and have that cleaned out, and
Don't talk about dozers in rivers.
DNR would have
You're
your.
just having a heart attack.
It's the big one.
Exactly, yeah.
well, we'd have an open river that we could canoe on then.
100 years ago, maybe, Larry, but not now. Not now.
No.
Well, I thought, come on, you guys just,
You can't even pile brush in a river and change the course of the river to make a hole in it anymore. You used to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
well, I thought it was a good idea. Go ahead, you can lay all that.
Let's move on to finance committee.
No report.
Okay, CDA report from last night.
Mark or Mark?
I would say it would be addressed in the next one under the administrator
Oh, okay.
for the most part.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's right.
It's your turn.
Alright. The developers agreement with Bardo, obviously, you guys all know you approved it, it's been signed, agreed to, and progressing. What's going on now is I have a commitment letter from the bank. So that was one of the hurdles we had to get over. And I have a signed offer to purchase of the J&J building. So that is ready to go. The one hiccup we've run into is we haven't submitted the grant yet. And that's because the state received in $1 million more in grant applications in this fiscal cycle than they have funds to distribute. So we're considering pushing it off to the next fiscal cycle, which starts in July.
So like July 1?
On July 1.
Okay.
But the state's looking at 3 deadlines. So the deadline will be in August. So they won't make any decisions or review until September with a decision in October. Well, that kind of changes things on how the grant is set up. Because the grant is 25% of project cost. And you can't start any project before the grant, which kind of hamstrings things. However, the grant will let us do acquisition prior to the grant. So that is a grant eligible project of it. So there's a good chance we might not get the full $250,000, cause I don't know if we can define $1 million worth of project basically after October 1. It might be a smaller amount of the project that can happen after then. So, Kurt Munkel from Bierbecker and Associates, he and I talked with Nalita Burr of the Economic Development Corporation about this over the phone. We got the scoop from her, and then Kurt came up that same day, and him and I went and sat down with Barry and had the discussion with Barry, so he knew kind of how everything was gonna play out going forward. And it looks like I'm gonna probably meet with Freedy and Associates, their construction company, on Thursday to go over it as well. Because one of the concepts we have is that they will acquire J&J, tear down J&J, and then start the construction on the warehouse. Because as soon as they take down J&J, they have no storage. And so they're gonna be used in tractor trailers and whatnot for storage. So they need that building up as fast as possible. And once they get that building up, you know, they can start using it as storage. But what we're considering is not having them do the office building right away, and no landscaping, no paving, no utility, you know, they're gonna have to do some utility work, but we'll have to, that's something we'll have to figure out how we can get around that. But then kind of do those details after the grant is awarded, so then they're all grant eligible funds so that we can then use towards Cedar Street, in essence.
Is
So,
J&J that blue building?
White,
Oh, that one that has Quick Trip on it?
yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, everything's a go. I mean, everything's a go, but this grant, it's become frustrating because the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, you know, portrayed themselves as being different than the rest of the state in how they dole out funds and how they, you know, make their requirements. Well, they've turned into no different than any other state organization. And, you know, now putting a deadline on the application, you know, a 30-day review period, and no funds can be expended ahead of time, and all this type of stuff. And we even said to her, it's like, well, you know, you guys really need to rethink this, because then we should have just applied in February with no information. You know, said, here's our project, here's what we're gonna do it for, we'll give you all the information after you give us the award. You know, and that's what we said to her, and she's like, yeah, that makes sense, you know, because otherwise you spend all this time doing all the legwork, getting ready to go, and ready to have your boots on the ground, and oh, now you gotta wait another 6 months for them to make a decision. So, but like I said, acquisition and demolition is, are costs that can be incurred ahead of time, before it is, because they understand that aspect, so.
So we
But
could
like I said-
possibly include the acquisition of the J&J building, even though they're gonna have that knocked down ahead of time?
Yeah,
The acquisition cost, or whatever that is, could be included.
yes. So the acquisition of that will be included as part of the project, so we're hoping that you take the $225,000 for acquisition, add it to hopefully, you know, $600,000 or whatever of remaining project to get to $800,000, so that we can get a grant for $200,000. So that's kind of what we're, you know, hoping for, and that's, I think, the purpose of the meeting on Thursday with Freedy and Associates. So. And the funny thing, there's gonna be kind of, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but the WEDC doesn't necessarily wanna spend money on infrastructure. So, even though our original funds will be upfront and held for acquisition, we're gonna portray that in the project as that the WEDC monies is gonna reimburse the acquisition and provide for other site work, but the city's funds are gonna go for the infrastructure improvements. So it's kinda gonna be one of those, you know,
When you're ready to talk about that, we'll have to sit down so I can get that redrafted. Do you
Yeah.
need to meet with Freedy first?
yeah, I wanna need to
Why
meet
why
with
don't you
you
give me a
first.
call when you're ready, and then we'll sit down and talk about the go get agreement, see what we need to change.
Okay. 5-year finance plan, you guys go home and read it, or start reading it, looking it over, and if you have suggestions on how to project out, that's great. The update on raise and municipal flood control grant. Yesterday, I got a phone call about, and yesterday wasn't busy enough, I guess, so dealing with Bardo and the WEDC, but I got a phone call from Jill Mendham and Richard about a smell of fuel oil on 523 Franklin Street. Okay? Well, so she's like, you got 20 minutes or 10 minutes to come down here, and I'm like, well, that's all I have, because I have a meeting with Bardo here shortly. So I went down there, didn't bring the key, didn't bring anything. Yep, there's fuel oil that had been disposed to the ground through the sump pump. And so I said, okay, I go, let me go get my fire chief, Jamie, and we'll come back. But I said, I got another meeting I gotta go to. So I go to this other meeting, get done with the meeting, get a hold of Jamie, he comes, picks me up, we drive back over, I got the key this time, let's do our own investigation, let's figure out what's going on. And so, we basically both confirmed, with the sniff test that it's fuel oil on the ground. We go into the building, well, prior to that, when I'm standing out at this spill with Richard, he's smoking a cigarette. And I had to repeatedly ask him to move away because I'm not getting torched, standing there, So Jamie and I went inside and investigated a little bit, and, there was the fuel tank was at an angle, the fuel filter happened to be in the sump pit. So fuel did get somehow into the sump pit, and then the sump pump ran and kicked it out onto the ground. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, by the previous landowner that we bought it from, that's yet to be determined. So as Jamie and I came out of it, and we're talking about, okay, we need to call, Mr. Hanratty and, ask him some questions. Richard comes back across the street and said, hey, we called the DNR and the game warden's gonna be here in 5 minutes. So, game warden shows up, takes pictures, you're right with me, I see you shaking your head. The game warden takes pictures, he asks us some questions, and he's like, I'm gonna refer this to our hazardous materials people. And so, needless to say, I've had 2 conversations today with the DNR about this. And if it was roughly somewhere under 10 gallons spilled, that it would just be nothing. It wouldn't even be a cleanup issue, but we assume it's somewhere above 20 gallons that were disposed of on the ground. And we are the current owners of the property.
So we're gonna have to
So
pay
we're
to
the
get it
responsible party in this situation. So now we have to clean it up. And I got an email from the DNR today, and so yeah, we have to clean it up.
What does he suggest? What do they want us to do with it?
We might have to do soil borings, we might have to excavate it, we might have to haul it to a hazardous material landfill, and all that stuff, so we basically have to do a little bit of research first and foremost, so. It could have been handled different. That wasn't good. That wasn't a good way to end the day yesterday. We talked about the mobile home park earlier, asbestos inspection results. There's basically no asbestos in the J&J building, so that's great. I haven't seen the report on 523 Franklin Street, and he didn't get into the 119 Main Street, that's the blue building. So we just gotta figure out how we can get in there.
I think I can get your key.
So if Bill can get us a key, then I'll get the inspector back to inspect that before we demo it, so. And then as far as the city-owned lots go, we canceled the accepted offer. Because the person who put in the offer had no intentions of building out there. They might have wanted to put a pool out there, but they had no intentions of building, and that was kind of our requirement to it. And somehow that got lost between us and the realtor, that was actually a requirement of the purchase of the property, that they build, within 2 years to reap the benefits. And so, I did a cancel, I think on Monday, I think I signed the cancellation of that. So we have no offers right now. There's interest, just no offers yet.
Okay. Next meeting schedules? We got next Tuesday?
So next Tuesday, just to discuss the state trust fund money, getting money for our developers agreements. We have open book and board of review on June 26th. You guys don't have to come to open book, just so you know, unless you're gonna come, talk about your own property or whatever, or you just wanna sit in on it. So you don't necessarily have to be there for that, cause that's just the assessor going one-on-one with property owners. If you do wanna dispute your assessment, you have to file with us 48 hours in advance, so just so you know that. Otherwise, you have to have a really good explanation why on the 26th you did file